everybody.
Hi.
I am Melissa Tosetti, and forgive me for adjusting our world. My name is Melissa Tosetti, and I am the founder of The Savvy Life, and this is...
I'm Kevin Gibbons, and I'm Vice President of The Savvy Life.
And we have joined we have started our show on smart spending just a few minutes early to give people a chance to log in and join us. This is a bit unique in that we are presenting this material live via Caffeine TV, and we are also recording it. So you may be watching us in the present, or you may be watching us in the future via YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, so we're a little bit of a time traveling duo. If you will. Forgive me, I just started rolling in. You introduce yourself?
I did introduce myself,
okay,
but yeah, I'm apparently not very memorably. So I am Kevin Gibbons. I'm a Vice President of The Savvy Life.
So I was so focused on time travel. All right, so that being said, actually you were telling me something very interesting about PayPal today.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing more and more is buying things on the internet. Old people are doing it, or old-fashioned people are doing it mail order. And one of the things that we've had a recent experience with is my wife bought an antique, fairly expensive antique, and was somewhat concerned about liability if something should go wrong, if the person should just not send the part, if the part should get lost. I mean, there is insurance if parts are already broken. We're very familiar with that, unfortunately. But she was very concerned that this was a high-price item and she didn't want to lose the money. So she did a little bit of research and she found out that if she paid through PayPal and actually paid for it out of her checking account, then PayPal would insure the purchase, not insure the item against breakage. But if something went wrong with the purchase, PayPal would refund her the money and then go after the seller to clean things up. If she used her PayPal credit account, then they would not. Then, all right, so... Yeah. It was a little bit of a stress for her. She wanted to use her credit card because it was a fairly large purchase, but she specifically said, no, I'm going to move my money around and I'm going to pay for it using my bank account through PayPal so I get that coverage. Sure enough, she's had some problems where the item got shipped in December. It hasn't shown up yet. Nobody knows what happens to it. All right. Okay. And so my wife is not particularly concerned because this will either work out and she'll get her part back, she'll get her part, or she'll get her money back. The seller is concerned because the seller could be out a lot of money if this thing disappears.
Yeah.
So what my whole point is when we're talking about this is with the amount of online purchasing we're doing, take the time to figure out how to cover yourself. Yeah. There are some options when you buy things that you are protected. There are other options where you may not be. And the common one people always use is the difference between buying something with your credit card versus a debit card and how coverage limits vary. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and it really depends on the actual solution and the company that you're working with. But the little pre-show topic that we're having right now is just go ahead and take the time to understand the rules of how your purchase works and do what you can to protect yourself.
It's getting some kind of trigger to remind yourself to be. This is where the word mindful comes in, right? Yeah. We do so much out of autopilot. Yep. Our spending, again, I say it all the time, our spending is rapid fire, but maybe there's a dollar amount or some kind of trigger to make you take a couple steps back and think, okay, how do I want to do this? If something happens, how do I want to do this?
That is certainly what triggered it in this case. This was a much larger dollar purchase than my wife normally makes. We collect antiques, and so we spend some amount of money on it. This one item was a bit more expensive than what we normally buy, and that triggered it with her. So she went through and said, "Hey, I want to. This is some real money I'm talking about. I don't want to. I don't want to risk losing this." And so she did the investigation on that.
So if it actually shows up, you're going to have to bring a picture in because we're all curious now as to what this thing is and what it looks like.
Yeah, it's pretty ornate. My wife collects Art Nouveau and Art Deco porcelain and pottery, and it's a great big statue of a woman's bust, and it's crazy looking.
Of a bust of a woman or a woman's bust?
A bust of a woman.
Yeah, okay.
The woman's bust is included, but also her face.
Now we really want to see it.
All right, we are at 3 o'clock.
All right, so we're officially starting at the top of the hour. Again, if you are just joining us, my name is Melissa Tosetti. I am the founder of The Savvy Life, and this is...
I am Kevin Gibbons. I'm Vice President of The Savvy Life.
Our show is all about smart spending, looking at personal finance from a lifestyle perspective. Our show's a little unique. We are actually broadcasting live right now, and we are also recording this session. So you may be watching us in the present, or you may be watching us in the future. Either way, hi.
Hello.
So we have a topic today that we want to introduce you to. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, but for a lot of people, when we bring this topic up, it's something that they've never heard of. It's a new concept, but unfortunately, it's something that so many fall prey to, and that is called, we call it goldfish syndrome. A lot of people know it as lifestyle creep, and that is the phenomena that ends up happening where as we go along in our career and our income continues to increase, we have this habit of actually increasing our expenses along the way.
You keep raising your lifestyle to match your income. And the key problem with that is that if you keep doing that, as you make more and more money, you're consuming it and you're not really increasing your savings. And that's the crux of it.
It's one of the reasons why, we talk a lot about a high income does not mean that you're wealthy. We've worked with plenty of people that make, $300,000, $500,000,
or $1
million a year income, and they don't have anything.
They lease their they're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, lease their car, nothing going into a 401k. They rent a home, and it's the amount of people that think, oh, if I had $1 million a year, I'd be set. And it's like, well, it's really, really what you do with it. Yeah. And so the way that that lifestyle creep occurs, and this is very important to explain because you need to be, when you're aware of it, you can be on the lookout for it. It starts innocently enough where we might start off in our official career, right? The thing that we really want to do, or that we're doing. Be fair, and you might get your first real paycheck, and the first thing that you want to do is go and replace your beat up unreliable car. That's fantastic. Maybe a couple of raises in, a year or so into your career, you decide that now's the time to pull the trigger and buy the house,
or maybe rent a nicer place, whatever your thing is. Anyway, get something a little bit nicer living arrangements.
Exactly. And then for a couple of years after that, you're just kind of like fine tuning your life, right? But what ends up happening is we don't hit that point where, okay, I'm at the top of my bell curve, if you will, and now what I want to do is I want to just see if I can keep my expenses here, and as my income increases, that's when I'm going to grab that wealth. Well, it never occurs to us.
No, instead what we do is we keep upgrading the car, upgrading the house,
buying vacation
homes, joining the country club, sending the kids to better schools or summer camps or whatever, and you just keep increasing your lifestyle and finding new ways to spend the added money that you get as your career advances.
And on top of all of that, there's a quote that I quote myself that I float around on social media quite a bit. It is very easy to save money when you have to. Truly, the challenge is to spend smart when you don't have to. When there's plenty of money to have those same again, triggers of like, is this where I want to spend? Is this where I want to save? Do I really want this? Not again from a frugality standpoint, but from is this item going to actually increase my quality of life, or am I just distracted by it right now? And so all of these things have a tendency to occur. If this speaks to you, then there is a rule that can be so beneficial to your future life, or perhaps even your immediate life. Because one of the reasons we want to talk about this now is we're getting into bonus time, right? A lot of people in February and March is when they're going to get their bonuses. So you want to introduce the 50-50 rule?
Sure. So the 50-50 rule actually we're very proud of it. It's a simple idea that is incredibly effective in helping you to capture the money that you make as your income increases. And the rule is that whenever you get a bonus or a raise or any type of increase in your income, 50% of that immediately goes to long-term wealth building. So that can be, I'm going to put a lump sum into an IRA or 401k. I'm going to give it to my financial advisor to invest. Depending on where you are in your life path, it may be I'm going to take this money, put it in an investment area so that I can buy the house. Again, it's for relatively long-term wealth building. So 50% of every increase that you get immediately goes to this long-term wealth building. Yep. The other 50%, you can spend however you want with one simple rule. You cannot increase your debt load. And so the example that Melissa uses, which is actually kind of near and dear to my heart, is that if you get a $20,000 bonus, $10,000 of that goes into long-term wealth building, either your IRA, 401k, or you give it to your financial advisor to invest. You can take the rest of that $10,000 and you can buy a motorcycle with it.
Outright.
You cannot use it as a down payment for a motorcycle that you're then going to be making monthly payments on, because now you've just increased a debt. You've added a debt to your financial situation, so you can't do that. So 50% rule. 50% of it goes to the long-term wealth. The other 50% you can spend on anything that does not increase your debt load.
Exactly. And the beauty of this, and why this particular rule of thumb speaks to my heart so much, is it is the epitome of savvy living.
Yeah.
You're building a strong financial foundation while you are enjoying the journey.
Exactly.
I actually learned this particular rule of thumb from a financial advisor I worked with close to a decade ago, and it was the rule of thumb that he used. He grew up not real good role models around money. Growing up, he went into the military, decided that he really liked this idea of money, and somewhere along the way, this rule came to him, and he built his wealth on it.
Yep.
And it was like magic. And I thought, why does everybody not know this? This is genius. This is so simple, and it's so genius, and it is. And so if you think about it, every single pay raise, let's say you decide to start using this for you when you're maybe in your late 20s. Early 30s, okay?
So you've bought your first new car, you've moved once to where you don't have to battle the cockroaches for your supper.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so now every time you get a pay raise, you're going to put that 50% of that increase is going to go. So now, but you're going to still feel a 50% bump, but you're really going to feel it, because what ends up happening is, so often when we don't feel those pay raises is because, again, we have committed that pay raise to some other bill, right? And so you're going to actually, every single year, you're going to feel there's going to be more money in that checking account. So when we think of it, and we talk about, a lot of it's that one-time thing, but if you continue to do that for years and decades, you're going to have the experience of a couple that I just worked with they're in Alabama, where they are saving, was it 40% of their, 40% of their income. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So impressive. And it's simply because they were just super smart.
And so
with their money.
This works in really well with something we talked about just in the past, last week in fact, which was the 1% challenge, where a lot of people, a common rule of thumb, it's debatable, but a common rule of thumb is you should save 15% of your income. All right. A lot of people look at that and think, oh my God, that's huge, I can't do that. So last week we talked about, well, start saving 1%, and then every 3 months add another percent. All right. And then you just slowly increase that, and that's how you can eventually get to the 15%. If you follow this 50-50 rule, you're leapfrogging that.
Exactly.
Because now you're adding, say that you get a 3% raise, which is on the low end, but it's 3 to 5% is pretty standard. So, all right, now you've just added a 1.5 to a 2.5% savings with no change to your lifestyle. In fact, you're going to be seeing an increase in your lifestyle from the other 50%. So now you're increasing your savings at a higher rate than what we talked about last week, and you're actually improving your living standard. It's really a great win.
So on any given day, with this extra surplus money that you've got, or any given year, you're like, okay, I've got this extra surplus. Are we going to go on a bigger vacation? Am I going to maybe save it for some, serendipitous moment?
Or a larger purpose or whatever.
Exactly. And so it's an extraordinarily exciting rule to execute, if you will. I want to be very careful, though, because, again, we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of clients, a lot of different income levels. There are clients that we've had that, I'm thinking of one client, for example, in Atlanta. He is a contractor. We helped him identify a $450,000 surplus that he had at the end of the year based on income from business. I did not suggest that he spent $225,000 on taking his kids to Disney World. Not at all. So this is a guideline and it is a rule of thumb. And if you are in that process, you've got, you're working with a financial advisor, this is the conversation to have with your financial advisor. They would love to have that conversation with you. But one of our greatest goals is to get this rule out there, to get people aware of it, because it is trans-freaking-formational.
I think the real key that you're saying is that if you're in, I don't want to say a fortunate circumstance, because he worked very hard to get where he was, but still, if you're in a circumstance where you are making what many people would consider to be an extraordinary, having experienced an extraordinary increase in income, then the rules change a little bit.
Yeah.
But for the average worker in the United States, the idea of just taking 50% of any bonus or increase and saving that is a really great way to start. If you are fortunate, talented, blessed, whatever enough to where your income this year is going up by 1,000%, then by all means figure out what you need to live on with a little bit more to enjoy yourself and save as much of that as you can. There are variations around that. But for a general rule of thumb for the average income earner, this concept of saving 50% of what your bonus or pay increase is a very good practice.
Yeah. And I think too, this is a related, not related topic. This is also very dependent on what your type of career is. So for example, this particular gentleman, he's a contractor, and as we're talking, I'm remembering one of his big motivations for wanting to go through this process is, he had a lot of really good years as a contractor. He knows it's the nature of the business. At some point, there's going to be a dip, and he's going to have to start to streamline his spending. He's got to have, by capturing that money, he's giving himself an opportunity to make sure that he doesn't go on a roller coaster. Right. Real estate agents, same thing. If you're in the tech world, it is almost a given that, you're
going to get laid off at some point.
At some point, it's just, this is where the Savvy Life was actually spawned from. I was in high-tech public relations, and in 2001, the dot-com bubble burst, and I saw all these people that were making $200,000, $300,000 a year, spending it all.
Yeah,
and then it goes away. Yeah. So I'm usually a very positive person by nature, so I don't want to be negative about that, but it's really, again, going back to, you have to be aware of what your particular situation is. So we want to be very careful not to give black and white advice, if you will. Yeah. Make that rule of thumb your own. Yeah. Okay. Anything else about this particular topic that we want to cover?
I don't know. We covered the idea. The one thing I will say about the lifestyle creep is one of the biggest drivers of lifestyle creep is keeping up with the Joneses, is looking at what your neighbors are doing, and you are driving an Acura and you look over in their driveway and you see a Jaguar or a BMW. And as hard as it is, and it's something that your mother always told you is, don't judge yourself based upon others. As hard as that is, you really have to look and see what do you want that will make you happy, and not judge your apparent wealth and your apparent happiness by those around you, because it's a vicious cycle. One of the things that Melissa talks about is when she was starting in that tech business was how everybody in all the executive assistants in her office were dressed in expensive clothes, had expensive hairdos, were driving expensive cars. And she was wondering, how in the heck are they affording this on an executive assistant salary? And the answer was they weren't. They were getting horribly into debt.
Yeah.
And that's not the solution. So don't base your vision of what your life should look like upon those around you. As much as possible, really try to internalize that and look for what is important to you, irrespective of what other people are doing and have.
Yeah, and one of the unfortunate things about that particular scenario, the old Joneses syndrome, is it's not just your neighbors anymore, and it's not just your coworkers. It is your 800 friends on Facebook and all the Instagram folks that you follow. And we have worked with clients that have identified that they get triggered to make purchases based on those influencers, and we work with them to flip that trigger. And a huge part of that is really identifying, taking 10 steps back and saying, okay, And this is the fun part of what we do. What do you want your life to look like,
exactly.
right? You be the influencer.
Exactly. So that's kind of an old trite aphorism to say that, but it really is critical.
So we actually did a video on that, I think about 6 or 8 months ago. I will put a link in the notes if you're watching us in the future on YouTube. I'll put a link in the notes to that. And it was actually a really good session. It's one of my favorite topics because it's pervasive. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, great. Thank you very much for watching. We are The Savvy Life, and you can find us on the social media.
The social medias, Facebook, Instagram.
Yep. Our website is thesavvylife.com. You'll find articles and video links there as well. And we have a newsletter that you can sign up for, which will also give you links to new articles and new video content every week. You
can check us out at thesavvylife.com. If you are watching us live, you can find us on YouTube at The Savvy Life, and you can type in my last name, Tosetti, Tosetti. And with that, we're going to bid adieu to those of you in the future, and we'll catch you on another YouTube video.
Thank you.
Thanks.